5 black towns that were flooded and turned into lakes. Beneath these waters lie the remains of entire communities, towns that once thrived, full of black families, businesses, schools, and churches. But today, they are gone, erased from maps and memory, replaced with lakes that tell no stories. This isn't just about natural disasters. Many of these towns were deliberately destroyed, their residents forced out, their histories buried. These are 5 black towns that now exist only beneath the water. Chaktotor, Oscarville, Georgia, now Lake Lanier. In the early 1900s, Oscarville, Georgia was a flourishing black community. Families owned land, farms, and businesses. But in 1912, a violent white mob ran them out. They were accused, without evidence, of crimes against white residents. This led to racial terror, lynchings, and the forced exodus of nearly all black citizens from Forsyth County. Their homes, churches, and schools were abandoned. Decades later, in the 1950s, the U.S. government built a dam and flooded the area to create Lake Lanier, one of the most popular lakes in Georgia. But this lake has a dark reputation. Over 700 people have drowned here since its creation, with many saying the water hides more than just debris. Fishermen report seeing structures, staircases, and even tombstones beneath the surface. Is it a coincidence that a once thriving black town was wiped out and turned into a lake? Or was it part of a larger pattern? Vanport, Oregon. Now under the Columbia River. Vanport was Oregon's largest black majority city, built in 1942 to house workers for the Portland shipyards. At its peak, it had over 40,000 residents, many of them black families who had come seeking jobs and a better life. It was the most diverse city in the state, but that also meant it faced discrimination from surrounding areas. The town was built on low-lying land near the Columbia River, with a levee meant to protect it. But in 1948, during a heavy spring runoff, the levee broke. Residents had no warning. Water rushed in at 10 feet per second, wiping out the entire city in less than a day. More than 15 people died, and thousands were left homeless. Officials claimed it was an accident, but many believed the city was deliberately neglected. The land was never rebuilt, and today, what was once a thriving black community is underwater, part of the Columbia River's floodplain. Seneca, South Carolina. Now Lake Keowee. Seneca, South Carolina, was once a vibrant town where black families built generational wealth through farming and business ownership. It had schools, churches, and strong community ties. But when Duke Energy decided to build a hydroelectric dam in the 1960s, the land was taken and Lake Keowee was created. The residents had no choice but to leave. Their homes, their history, their entire way of life, submerged beneath the lake. Many of them were given little to no compensation. The government labeled it progress, but for the families forced out, it was a loss they never recovered from. Today, Lake Keowee is known for its clear blue waters, expensive lakefront homes, and recreational activities. Few people know what lies beneath. Fairfield, Alabama. Now Lake Martin Fairfield was a thriving black community in Alabama, but its story changed when the government decided to create a massive hydroelectric reservoir, Lake Martin. Black landowners were forced to sell their properties for fractions of their value. Those who refused found their land taken through eminent domain. Once the dam was built, entire neighborhoods disappeared under the rising waters. Churches, businesses, homes, gone. And like many other lakes with similar stories, Lake Martin is now a hotspot for tourism and vacation homes. Generations later, the descendants of those who lived there are left with nothing but stories. Possum Kingdom, Texas. Now Possum Kingdom Lake. In the 1940s, Possum Kingdom, Texas, had small but significant black communities, many of them made up of freed slaves and their descendants. They had worked the land for decades, but when the state decided to build a massive reservoir, those communities were erased. People were given little warning. Some managed to relocate while others lost everything. Possum Kingdom Lake was formed, and the black communities that once stood there faded from memory. Today, it's a popular destination for boaters and vacationers. But if the water could talk, it would tell a very different story. These towns were more than just places. They were homes, histories, and legacies. They were erased, not by time, but by deliberate actions. Some were violently pushed out. Others were drowned under the label of progress. The lakes that cover them today may be peaceful, but they hold the untold stories of thousands of people whose lives were forever changed. Have you heard of these lost black towns before? Do you know of others with similar histories? Drop a comment below, and let's keep these stories alive. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more people can learn the truth about these forgotten communities.